So student council is fundamentally important to the healthy school, and a healthy student council is that component that makes school culture better. And so one of the things that helps me, and I'm going to talk about the role of the principal and the role of student council, but for principals, I think that having a student council that's engaged and is communicative to the principal or the administrator is key. And so I know that some people are really strong planners and some people are, let's just take it month by month. But if you can start with a year's calendar, the bones of the year, like we know that September is going to have homecoming. We know that there's going to be a dance in December. We know that the Sadie Hawkins dance is going to be here. Parent-teacher conferences are here. Prom, homecoming, wish week, whatever it is that your student councils do, start a 12-month calendar. And I say 12-month because it should also include like the student council retreat and summer conferences and those kinds of things. So if you can start your calendar and say, here's all of the important milestones we have for the school year, and then either share it with the principal or sit down, have you and a couple of your kids sit down with the principal and say, here's what we're looking at for the year. Then I can turn around and say, yes, and don't forget that we play Wheat Ridge, one of our big rivals, in our basketball game here, or this is going to be an important week here because we're going to have, I don't know, somebody come in from the state or from the school board, and we're going to really want to showcase what we're doing with kids. So please put this on the calendar also, so that kids are involved in not just sort of that party planning, but they're also in charge of or have the opportunity for input within the school leadership and school culture part of running the building. And as soon as we've got that calendar, then it allows us to, it allows all of us to be on the same page and be able to support one another. And I think that's the biggest thing, because I think that sometimes student councils feel like they're out on an island and they don't have any kind of input or support from the administrator, because administrators get busy and then all of a sudden it's that sort of student council's out of sight, out of mind until it's a dress up day. And then we're like, whoa, what do you mean it's a dress up day? So I think the more often that we can communicate, the better it is for everybody. And so depending on how large your school is and how large your student council is, having a communication committee or just one or two people designated to be the liaison for the principal and student council. And then go down to your principal secretary and get on the calendar. That's the most important thing, is get on the calendar. Because if it's on my calendar, it's going to happen. And so if you stop me in the hallway and say, hey, Conroy, we have this idea, I'm on my way to something, I'm already distracted, and so you're probably not going to get the answer that you want, or you're going to get a deferred answer. Write it down, come see me later. But if you're on my calendar, then I can meet with kids see the decision-making process, I can meet with the sponsor and a student, and that helps develop a routine that helps build trust between the administration and student council. And so I think that's huge, is get on the principal's calendar. I don't make appointments for myself. My secretary makes all my appointments. She maintains my calendar and keeps me on track. So however your principal works or your assistant principal works, make sure that you get on their calendar. I can't stress that one enough. That one's just huge because it allows us to have that consistent communication chain, because I don't like surprises. I don't like surprises on my birthday or my anniversary. I don't like surprises in school. I like some consistency, especially because school is so chaotic. So if we can be in good, strong communication, then everything is good. All right. So what do you do in these meetings? If you have a proposal and you want to try something, if it's the 150th homecoming that we've done the same thing that we've always going to do, write it down, list it out. If it's something totally brand new, write it down and list it out. And when I say list it out, some of the things that are important to include are like, what's the purpose of the activity? Because I think sometimes we do stuff because we've always done it, but we've forgotten why we're doing it. And so, what's the purpose of the activity, and what groups of students are we targeting? And I had the school that I went to on the Eastern Plains had 200 kids in the building. So, there were 32 kids in my graduating class. So everything that we did in student council involved the entire building because there were only 200 of us. Well, the school that I'm in charge of right now has almost 1,400 kids, and we have to make sure that our student leadership is doing the best that they can to reach out to all of our students. And sometimes you can get sort of an incestuous student council where they're all from the same peer group, or they're all sort of friends or family, their legacy. All of a sudden, this is the 5th generation of student council kid. And I'm like, why are you even in here? You don't even like student council. So, it's not and it became a family expectation. So one of the things we want to do is make sure that all of our, all the things that we're doing for student councils are targeting as many kids as we can get. So what's the purpose? What groups are we going to target? And how do we include as many kids as possible? The time and the place, which also includes setup and tear down, so that we have an understanding of if we're going to sell tickets for prom after school, that kids might have to get out of the class a little bit early so that they can be set up. Because if we wait till the bell rings to try to set up and get a cash box and do all of that, we've lost a huge chunk of kids. They've already walked out the door. So set up or the time and place, including setup and tear down, and who's supervising the event. Do you want me there? And because if you want me there, you can't come the day before and say, hey, Conrad, we need you to supervise something, because my answer is probably going to be no. So who's supervising? Is it just going to be the student council sponsor? Do we need administrators? Do we need campus supervisors? What do we need in terms of supervision at whatever thing that you're going to do? And then how much does it cost? And this one's huge, because I know that student councils don't have any money, right? So one of the things that you try to do is, we're going to do this, and we're going to charge everybody $5, and then we're going to use the money for this. So if you're going to charge, what's the money going to? Is it just to cover the cost, or is this a fundraiser? Because if it's a fundraiser, then you have to make sure you fill out the appropriate paperwork, because we're all bureaucrats, right? So if their paperwork's not filled out properly, then you can't do the fundraiser. But the other thing that we have to keep in mind is $5 for pizza and a dance and some activities doesn't seem like a lot, unless you don't have $5, and then it may as well be $1,000. So 1 in 5 of my kids is on free and reduced lunch. If everything we do as a student council costs money, then 1 in 5 of our kids, 20% of Golden High School, isn't invited and can't do what they need to do. They can't participate because they don't have $5. So either how do we help kids who are on free and reduced and can't afford it? Is there some kind of way to subsidize it? Or are we just going to let them in for free? But that's some of the things that we have to think about. If you're the former school that I was in, when I was a teacher, had a 2% free and reduced lunch rate, but we just paid for anything. If you were F&R, you got into all our dances for free. You got the pizza for free, whatever it was, because it was 2%, and we could easily afford to cover all of that. But for the school I'm in at now, where 1 in 5 kids is free and reduced, it would be very difficult to subsidize it for every student. So we have to start thinking about, how do we work with our financial secretary, principal discretionary money, which Every principal is going to say they don't have any discretionary money. They always have a little bit of discretionary money. So how can we help include all of our kids in that? So purpose of the activity, what groups are we targeting, time and place, who's supervising the event, how much will it cost, what will the funds be used for, and how do we get all of our kids to be able to participate. I think those, in any proposal, those are fundamental. And then once you agree, have the principal sign it, and then the sponsor sign it, and then the student who's in charge of the committee or the class or the activity sign it. So then we have a written document we can all hold up and say, this is what we agreed to, so that if I walk in and I see that the dance is in the small gym or the activities in the gym, and I'm seeing stuff I didn't remember approving, you pull out that sheet of paper and say, old man, here's where it was. Remember, we agreed that we were going to have cornhole and other games and this kind of thing and a tap dancing floor. Okay, because if I walk in and just see a tap dancers on our gym floor, my AD is probably going to have an aneurysm. And I'm probably going to go, why are we having tap dancing? But we agreed to it, and we agreed that we'd put down a floor for tap dancing, and now we're all okay. It covers you, it covers me, and it covers the kids. Because we could have approved that proposal a month ago or 6 weeks ago. So I think it's really important to keep that paperwork so that we all know what we agreed to. And then everybody's covered and we're all set. So if a kid comes to me and says, hey, we want to do something, my answer is no until it's written down. And once it's written down, then it starts to become a plan. So think about how you might structure that. Ours are pretty similar. So every event, and regardless if it's the prom or homecoming, or if it's a quick bake sale for Rotary Club, it's basically the same form, so that there's consistency in that, and we know we're not overlooking anything. So I'm going to pause, and I'm going to ask for questions or experience, or what feedback do you have about that? How can I help answer any questions around that? Because this is supposed to be a conversation, not a lecture.
Brian, can I chime in real quick?
Sure.
Hi, everybody. I didn't introduce myself, but I'm Cass. I am the Student Activities Coordinator at Abraham Lincoln High School in DPS. And I'm going on my 7th year teaching, 6th year as an advisor. And I'm loving everything that you're saying, Brian. I've been through 2 different principals and multiple APs in charge of student council, and that relationship is so incredibly important. So my one question would be, just for the sake of some of the newer advisors here, do you have a template for an agreement that you would normally sign between SUCO and admin? Is there like a template that you follow, or does it look different every time? Is that something you'd be willing to share, especially for some of the newer advisors? I heard a first year in here saying that she had a rough time. Those kinds of things can be really helpful because we're told have a calendar, have an agreement. But I know my first couple of years, I didn't know what that looked like. So right. If you have something to share, that'd be awesome.
So I will get a hold of my student council sponsor, and this year I'm going to have a brand new one. Ooh. So and she's a brand new teacher. So I've got a new teacher, I've got a new student council sponsor. So we're working on what a template's going to look like for her. And she's also my tech person, so she's going to be able to do a lot more techie type of proposal stuff. And yeah, so as soon as I have one, I can give it to Justin, and Justin can send it out to activity directors or student council sponsors, or because I think we only have 6 people on this call, we can just I can give you my email too, and you just email me and I'll email it out.
I see more than 6.
You should definitely make your
Brian,
thing full
Brian, we got
screen
13
so
on the call, Brian.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I
I was wondering why you stopped the intros after like 4 people.
Yeah. You skipped all
I see 5 people and me.
There's way more.
Change your view up in like the top right corner, maybe.
Remember when I said I have a new tech person coming on board.
Yeah, you're really gonna need that tech person, huh?
Yeah, I'm desperate. Oh, there we go.
There
Hello,
you
people.
go.
All
You got
right.
a full house.
We do have a full house. So I will send something out, but I'll also write down my email address, and then if please, here's the thing: if you have a question, I am passionate about student council. So if you have a question or a concern or something's going on, send me an email, and I will do everything I can. Including, I even called up a principal one time and said, "Hey, man, what are you doing? Why are you totally discounting your student council? Because these are your allies. They're a total CYA for you. You want to implement a new thing, you get student council on board, and they will advocate for it because it feels like students had a voice rather than always being told what they're going to do. That now they've got a little bit of input. So I'm happy to be your advocate. All right. Hold on just a second. Ouch. You see that? Oh no, it's backwards, isn't it? B Conroy, as in Brian Conroy.
I'm gonna type it in the chat for you, Brian.
Oh, excellent, thank you. At jeffcoschools.us. Nope,
No.
.us, not .org.
.us. Sorry.
Okay, perfect. All right.
Brian, I have a question in regards to kids and advisors scheduling meetings with you. Would it be your preference that the students come in on their own to meet with you, or is that something that you prefer to also have an advisor with them as we try to grow these kids in leadership and build their confidence? Which is best?
So I think it depends on the confidence level of the kid. If the kid's just going to walk in and crumble the first time I say, so really, what's the purpose of all of this? And it shuts them down, because sometimes a question is just a question, right? But the higher up the food chain you get, the more a question is a shutdown. And so if it's a come in on the first day and the three of us meet, and then the next time just the student comes, that's totally fine. What I want to do is make sure that the interaction that we're having is building that trust. So I'm trusting student council, and student council is trusting us, because there's nothing more frustrating than doing all of this work and then at the last second have the principal walk in the room and just kill it because I didn't know about it. And it's frustrating for me and it's frustrating for them. So I would always prefer to meet just with kids, but we have to set that situation up for success. And so if you're a brand new student council sponsor and you've got new kids that are trying new things, then it's probably good to have us as a sit-down conversation with all of us. If you're an experienced student council sponsor and you already know the questions that I'm going to ask, you can prep the kid and then send the kid, and then we can have a true dialogue and they don't feel like they were set up by you or crushed by me. Does that make sense?
One of the things I've done over the years, just to add to that, is, and it depends on the principal, but we have been trying to train the kids how to write those proposals and have those practice conversations. And as we, as advisors know, we can anticipate what questions might be asked of the principal. Right. And so we do try and do our best to prep the kids in that and almost do a practice interview before they go in. But yes, we are trying to strongly encourage our kids to be the ones that initiate the meetings, set up the meetings, and do that all on their own. But again, I think you're right, Brian. You have to make sure that you get them prepared.
Right. And if you're a freshman and you've never talked to an administrator before, or every interaction you've ever had with them is negative, and now you're in a new building and you have a new administration and you have a whole new experience, there may be a send 2 or 3 kids, or 2 or 3 kids and the sponsor. If it's your student body president ought to be able to come in and anytime they want say, hey, old man, I've got a question for you, and we can sit down and have that conversation. Class presidents, student body president can schedule meetings with my secretary anytime. And then whoever we decide is our liaison, our communication liaison, they can schedule a meeting with me anytime to or through my secretary to come in so we can sit down and talk. But I try to limit that so I don't have 30 kids from student council coming in, 15 minutes at a time for an entire day asking the same question, or competing against ideas because they don't have a unified thought yet. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about any other questions before I move on? I got good wait time, so I can, yeah. All right. Okay, so we talked about a proposal and getting everybody's signatures, but let's talk about some things that that we can do that's a little bit proactive. So invite your principal to your student council meetings, or invite your administrator, your assistant principal to your student council meetings. And I think that it's good to be able to just drop in, and then that way, if I'm walking down the hallway and I see a student council meeting, I can just pop in and it doesn't kill conversation. When I walk into a room, and it doesn't matter who it is, it could be the teacher's lounge, it could be a classroom, it could be PTA, I kill the conversation when I walk into the room. And I know that. And so one of the things that I try to do is be around enough that it doesn't just kill the conversation. Because that now, I don't know if what you're saying is to appease me and make me happy, or if you're asking me some true questions, or you're having a really true good discussion around something. So invite me to the meeting, or invite your principal to the meeting. Otherwise, they may not feel comfortable going in. And how ridiculous is that, that the principal of the building may not feel comfortable going into the student council meeting because there haven't been some clear expectations set up. So if you can, invite them in. And they're not going to be able to make every one. And a standing meeting invitation doesn't work. It's, hey, this week we're going to discuss homecoming, or this week we're going to discuss, what we want to do for the month of November. No, November has something. When March doesn't really have anything going on except spring break. So what do you want to do during March? So let's come in and let's have those discussions. Invite the principal in, because I think the invitation is what matters. It's like if we weren't in COVID right now, we'd be down at the state student council conference. And right after that is the weekend retreat that many student councils do in order to do all of the initial planning for the opening of school and homecoming and all of that. Invite your principal or your director of student activities up to those retreats. They're not going to stay the whole time, but and they might not even come, but the invitation is important. Last year I went up to what was it, Estes Park for the YMCA, and our state student or our student council retreat was there. It was 3 days long. I went up for 1 day. I didn't stay the night. I drove up. I played the games with kids. We planned. We built a little trust and some bonding, and then I went away and let them continue to do all the things that they were going to do. That pays dividends for both groups in the long run. So invite your principal to those retreats that you do. Invite them to your classroom and give them the concrete stuff, not the we meet 3 days a week or 4 days a week. You can come whenever you want, because they're not going to come. But we're, hey, it's our second day, and I just want to make sure that you know all the freshman names, or how we're going to structure stuff. Just come on in and just be a fly on the wall or participate. Those, I think, are super important. The more you invite them, the more that you gain their trust, and the more trust we have in our student councils. And then set up that meeting with principal secretaries and make sure that proper planning is always going on. So if you show up the day before an event and you haven't asked a cash box and we don't have proper supervision or those types of basic things, the event may just get canceled. So, and don't, like I said, don't surprise me with we're doing this really big thing, because it may not happen. That proper planning helps everybody. It lowers stress and frustration for the kids. It lowers stress and frustration for teachers and administrators, because a lot of times we plan stuff, and I get super excited also, but then we forget we didn't talk to the teachers. And so all of a sudden, teachers are going to have kids coming in dressed up funky, or every 10 minutes we're going to be plucking a kid out of a classroom because it's a driving awareness kind of day, and we forgot to inform everybody. So the better planned and better prepared we are, the more flexible we are, and the more likely everything's going to go off without a hitch. So invite your principal into planning. Put them down as part of the grassroots if necessary, and just say, all I want you to do is listen. I don't want any input. I just want you to be there so kids know. And then if they have a question, they can ask you right off of the bat, especially if it's going to be high risk or high dollar, or it's going to involve another school. We tried to do some stuff with Wheat Ridge High School that was moderately successful, but then we lost our purpose and it evolved, and I stopped it because it lost its purpose. So let's think about how we can continue to get that planning done and trust built, so that we're all on the same page when we move on. Okay. All right. I'll stop there and ask for more questions or comments or examples that worked for the 12 schools that we have joining us.
So Brian, something that we've done every year, I know you said don't invite the principal to a regular meeting, but in our council, we only do an official meeting when class lands on a Wednesday. So it's pretty like every other week. So at the beginning of the year in August, I send a calendar invite to our principal and our activities director and invite them to all of those official meetings. And that's just a way that they see the structure of everything that's happening at once. Every committee gives an update. The motions come in for budgets and things like that. And so they're part of that discussion with kids through the whole year. And sometimes it's just the principal, sometimes it's the activities director. Sometimes they both come when they know it's, right before homecoming or big things. But by having that regular meeting on their schedule, I found that they show up because it's just part of their process and what they do. And I just get it on their calendar early in the year. Another thing we've done is—
Can I say something about that?
Mm-hmm.
But that's not, because my student council meets 4 days a week, right? So just come anytime. 4 days a week is not an invite, right? But every other Wednesday, that's an invite. That makes more sense. Yeah. And you're demonstrating purpose on that meeting because that's your official meeting. So that makes total sense to me.
Yeah, and the other thing we've done too is when our kids are proposing a lot of things all at once. So if we go into our winter or homecoming season where there are a lot of different events happening, the activities director will come and sit at a table in the corner of my room, and each committee will come over one at a time and have a conversation with him. And then I'm in the room working with other committees, but I can come over and address questions as they come up. And I found that works really well, because then if something comes up and they need to ask someone who's not on the committee, or if they need to ask me, we're all right there in the room. And so we have like one class time set aside where the activities director is sitting there, but it's not so much pressure as the entire class talking to him. He's kind of off to the side at a table working with the kids one group at a time. And that works really well if you're going into bigger events that I've found.
Yes. Yeah. And I think the other thing is you, regardless of what happens, you have to make it your own, right? So, and I think that works great because it's an established routine, and you don't want to do a whole bunch of work, wait a week for a proposal to the principal, and the principal kicks it back saying, no, you need to think about other things. So that getting in on the grassroots discussions is super important. I totally concur with that. All right. Other questions, other statements, other experiences? Okay, so let's talk about this school year for a second, because I don't know how much trepidation you guys are feeling about this school year. I know that your principals are a little bit panicked, and We don't know what it's going to look like. Everybody's been given a little bit of guidance of, here's what the school district is saying. You're in charge of making it happen in your building. And it could be easier if you have a school of 100. You know, if you're at Cherry Creek School District or Cherry Creek High School and they've got what, 2,300 kids or whatever, it's going to be a little bit more difficult or complex to open up school this year. And so one of the things that you might do is reach out to your principals and say, what can student council do to help open school? Because I know that kids are going to want some input on schedules. You know, Jeffco said that we're going to open up 100% in person and try to figure out how to make that work. Cherry Creek School District said basically the same thing, but they're opening on an 8-period rotation. So they're going to do 2 periods a day for 3 hours a day. So I think about that and I'm like, holy cow, what are you going to do in phys ed for 3 hours, right? What are you going to do in mathematics, which would be my nightmare? Mathematics for 3 hours at one time and for one day a week. So, and you can only cook so much in your FACS classes. So as you start to think about what school is going to look like for kids and for adults, I'm pretty sure I can whip out a schedule for our teachers and say, here's what we're going to do, and get lots of teacher input, because you're not going to roll out a schedule without teacher input. But I only have 107 teachers. I have 1,300 kids. So if those 1,370 kids aren't understanding what the schedule is and may not have some voice in it, it may be harder for them to understand what it is and say, yes, this makes a lot of sense. If student council or a couple of student council kids can work with people in your administration or your school leadership committee or whatever it is in opening up your building for next year, I think that's going to be a huge win for your student councils. And it's a confidence booster for both you as a sponsor, your student council students, and for the administration, because we really need all kids understanding and willingness to comply with some stuff that they're not going to want to do. They're not going to want to wear a mask every day for 6 hours. So I have teachers who are like, I'm not going to wear a mask for 6 hours. So I think that there's going to be some need for how to get student councils to help with opening up schools. And we also know that if kids don't want to do something, they can derail an entire building just like that. And it doesn't even need to be a lot of them. It could just be a handful of them. So call your principal, drop them an email, and state that you're ready to help with the reopening plan. They don't know what they're doing right now. I know in Jeffco, we got the plan yesterday at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's brand new for us. And I'm looking for all the help and support I can get. And because nobody likes surprises, you know, we want to make sure that kids know, staff knows, and administrators know what we're going to do at the beginning of the year, because the beginning of the year truly sets the tone for everything else. So if we can get student council helping to set the tone, then everybody's going to win. All right. So what other questions do you have? Because I really wanted to make this a discussion rather than a lecture, and so far not very many people have said something, and I've got like 20 minutes left. Actually, I've got 15 because I have to end at least 5 minutes early because I have another meeting at 10 o'clock that I need to go to that got scheduled after this got scheduled.
Hey, Brian, can I ask you to tell us a little bit about your school's demographics and maybe how you're planning to come back? I mean, most of us have said that it's probably more important to do some social emotional work before we do any book work. So can you talk to us about what that looks like at Golden as you greet your teachers and then they greet students?
So we're coming back we come back 24 August. And we're just going to bring our freshmen in on the 24th, and we're going to do some work with our freshmen. Our counselors, our administrators, our school leadership team all read a book about trauma in adolescence, because everybody keeps talking about the senior year and how everybody lost in their senior year. Well, the only thing that the seniors lost was athletic season, prom, and graduation, and we tried to figure some graduation stuff out. I'm concerned about this incoming senior class because they didn't have prom last year, and if things go sideways again, they won't have it again this year. Athletics are completely up in the air, and I tried to wiggle some stuff out of Justin earlier, and he was like, yeah, I'm not going to say anything. Our incoming freshmen don't have connections with our building. They don't know what it means to be a demon yet. They had some loss at the end of their 8th grade year, so there was some disconnect there. So there's going to have to be some serious discussion around how are we going to help kids feel like they're part of Golden High School community. They're going to have to feel like they're connected to teachers and to each other. And there are about 13 middle schools that send their kids to Golden High School on average, but we have 2 primary feeders, Bell Middle School, and then we get about half of the kids that go to Manning come to Golden High School. So for the most part, we're a community-based school. But because we get kids from all over through open enrollment, we have kids who walk in who are completely disconnected. The other thing that we have to have some serious conversation with as a society and as a school district and a little bit as Golden High School is, how are we going to take the movement for social justice that has been taking place in the streets, and how are we really going to help kids feel safe at school and feel like they're being treated equally at school? And so we've got all of that taking place right now. So, part of what we're doing is setting up, we're a restorative practice school. So our first day really isn't going to be, and the first day of school is normally the kiss of death anyway, right? Here's the list of rules. Nobody's going to be able to do this. You can't crumple up your paper when you turn it in, and everything has to be in ink. So we're going to set the course expectations aside for a day, or even for a couple of days, and say, what do you need to be successful? How are we going to build confidence in each other? Let's start doing some proactive circles around what was your greatest loss from last year? How are we going to overcome that? What do you need from school to feel safe? What do you need from school to help understand that you're important to our building, but it's also you're important to your family and to your friends? Because we've had kids that have been isolated since the middle of March. And we need to help them remember what it's like to be reintegrated into different microcosms of society. So we're going to spend some time doing that at the beginning of the school year, because if we just jump in with, woo, all right, let's learn some European history today, they're not going to be prepared to learn. They're already coming in nervous because I had to screen them for a temperature. I had to ensure that they had on a mask. They can't go to all of the different places and just hang out, and they're going straight to classes. So their anxiety level is already on the rise. It's kind of like going through airport security. Flying is a drag. There's always trepidation before you go on holiday. And then you're standing in a super long line at airport security. And then you get up there and they're like, nope, go through again. Or we found something in your pocket. Now we're going to have to pat you down. And now you're going to go through your suitcases. And everybody's anxiety is going up. Even if it's only one person in your party that got tagged, everybody's anxiety is going up. So we need to figure out a way how we're screening kids in the morning to bring that anxiety down. And I think what kids are going to be able to do is say, this is what's going to help us. I am 53 years old. I don't have that adolescent brain of we're all standing in line and getting screened and I'm zapping IDs and doing all of this. I don't know what it's doing to their brain. I don't know what it's doing to their ability to feel comfortable standing in the line. So we have to talk to those kids. That's why I think it's super important as student council sponsors to say, kids, how can we make the opening of school smoother and easier for everybody? And I'm trying to figure out how we're even going to take photo IDs, right? Do it outside, space it out, take your mask off, get your picture taken, put your mask back on, go to class, right? Because if we're in an enclosed space inside, you can't take your mask off. So how are we looking at, redoing all of our registration to make it more kid-centric and more kid-friendly? And what's really good about this is it's going to compel us as adults to think more kid-centric. And I don't care if you're kindergartner or 12th grade, we have to start thinking more kid-centric. Does that answer your question? Do you need some more?
Can you tell us what your demographics are over there?
Sure. Golden High School is the most economically diverse school in Jeffco. We've got about a 17% free and reduced rate, about a 60% mobility rate. We are about 85% white, and we have a small mix of different ethnicities after that. But we have people whose portfolios as kids is greater than all of our incomes together. And then we have 5 different trailer parks that kids also come to Golden High School. Those kids all sit right next to each other in class. We have, at the end of the school year, I had 27 homeless students. And not due to COVID. These are 27 homeless kids that were homeless before all of the craziness of COVID. So that's kind of my demographic.
Thank you.
Yeah. When I get my test scores back from the state for like African American, Native American, Asian, I don't get any data back because those populations are so small. Our Spanish population is our largest population. Okay. All right. What other questions you guys have? Anything else? I mean, I'm here.
Todd asked one on the chat.
Oh, I can't talk and read that at the same time.
I've been told that our class of 60 Stu-Go kids will be an online class. Not sure how we do all that, but it also sounds like we will not have to plan our homecoming either. Any others doing online versions?
Ooh.
We might. You're not alone, Todd. So
Do you guys know
Todd,
what
where
that'll
you
look
from?
like? I want ideas.
So I was told that DPS is going to be going back in full force, but we're not supposed to have a lot of kids in our class. So I have a 40 to 45 kid student council, depending on the year. And I was told I might only be able to have maybe 20 of them at a time. So this is where I would just say that communication and whatever protocols you set up with your kids is going to be huge. We use the band app for a lot of things. So the kids are already planning on doing like live group discussions in band when there's 20 in person and 20 out of person. And I've been kind of working with our administrators on what the meetings that they're going to come to is going to look like. What are some of our like leadership discussions going to look like? I think it's going to be really taking advantage of maybe some live streaming, some of the Zoom opportunities that you can use, and having everything in one place. I've always been a big advocate of having a Google Drive for everything student council that every kid can see, every administrator can see, and any of your co-sponsors can see. And now more than ever, that's a big thing, like a big, big thing.
Yeah. And Todd, where are you? What school?
I'm coming from Rangeview.
From Rangeview?
Yeah.
And you've got 60 kids in your student council? That's bloody amazing.
Yeah, and we reduced it down from 80 that we've been running with the last couple of years. We used to carry 20 per class, so we're trying to shrink it down a little bit. Nothing to do with COVID, it just was getting big.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the biggest challenges we have is trying to find a space in our building to have the class. We were using the theater, and now that's not as available as it used to be.
Can you use the gymnasium?
No, not with, what, 5, 6 different PE teachers. There's always a class going on in the gym.
Huh. Well, one
We
of the
were-
things that we're considering is I've got a 7-period day, and kids take 5 classes, and staff have 2 planning periods. I'm thinking about increasing it to an 8-period day where kids are taking 6 classes, and staff still have 2 planning periods. And that reduces the number of students per class and increases the number of quote unquote offerings that we have. I hire really good schedulers, so I'll probably butcher this a little bit, but in doing that, it freed up some of our larger spaces so that some of our bigger classes might be able to meet in the theater or the small gym. And we're lucky because we have two gyms.
Yeah, we do
So-
too. And I guess we
Yeah.
could, I guess the smaller gym is available more, but that's a rotten place to try to sit and do, lectures and whatnot.
Yeah, it's a rotten place to sit and do anything unless you're doing gym. So,
Yeah.
so I don't know. I think that what might be interesting is if there's some flexibility, and this really depends on, do you have a good scheduler or not, where you could do half your class on Monday, half your class on Tuesday, and everybody on Wednesday, something like that. Because that's what I walk in and tell my counselor. Or my schedulers. I've been thinking, can we do something like this? And then they run with it, and then he tries to come back and make me happy. So it might be one of those things where you just talk with your scheduler and with a couple of other people who really can do schedules in their brain and say, how do we work with 60 kids and student council and if we're not allowed to have a large space? Because I'd hate to say the library, because the library is probably a place you can do it, but then you have to close the library to kids, and I hate closing the library.
Right. One of the options that I was trying to come up with from last year was trying to be able to use the choir room. But at this point, for whatever reason, scheduling or whatever else, it sounds like that's kind of off the table. And I think the district is also saying that with the class that size, we're trying to, I think the goal is to, start classes and doing I can't remember who said they're talking about a schedule where it's like, we're going to do 2 classes a day. We have a morning session and an afternoon session, or cohort A and cohort B. We're only going to get through 2 classes in each one of those sessions on a given day. So, the whole thing just sounds like an incredible challenge to figure out how the schedules are going to work.
Right.
But last I heard that we were going to be, because of the size of the class, we were going to be forced to go into an online format.
Okay, so how about, and then this is going to be a total nightmare, and you can blame me, okay? So when you go talk to your counselor, just blame me or your scheduler. Is there a way, how many class periods do you have in a day, student-wise?
7.
7? So you're going to go to an 8-period day?
No, because, so like Monday morning would only be 2 classes. Each one would last about, I think the same thing what you were discussing earlier. And then we'll have, like this long lunch period where the custodians have to re-sanitize the entire building. And then in the afternoon, we'll have cohort B, who will also do periods 1 and 2 in the afternoon.
So can you divide your student council into period 1 cohorts and say half of you go period 1 and half of you go afternoon period 1?
Possibly. That's actually not a bad option. I will present that.
Yeah, blame it on me. I have all my fault insurance. It's okay.
I obviously this time period in history, we have to think outside the box. And so I like that idea of still trying to figure out new and different ways to do it. So we're not just relying of Zoom calls and whatnot, which are handy, but not necessarily efficient.
Right. Especially if you have 60 kids. So,
Truly.
okay. All right. Anything else? Anything else I can answer, defer, make Justin answer?
Brian, I guess I have a question for you. My name's Ryan. I'm from Mountain View High School up in Loveland. And we found ourselves completely online at the end of last year. And I think the hopes is that we could gather everybody with an online community, but that was very, very challenging with the quick transition. How do you see student council's online presence, or like what could we do to support if learning does go online, like supporting the learning, supporting the community, that kind of stuff, because we struggled.
Okay, so we did cool stuff around, we still had dress up days. And so what we'd do is you'd take a selfie and you'd send it in the student council sponsor, and then they'd put it on the Instagram page. You have to make sure that everybody's clear for their internet postings and stuff. But we had a lot of success. And then we'd say, okay, football team versus lacrosse team. Who's got the best selfies of working out or dressed up or those kinds of things. And we really tried to keep that demon pride theme involved in those activities or those dress up days, so that kids felt like they were still at school. And it was super low risk, right? It's pajama day. I wander on down, click, and then I can still go get dressed. So I'm not in my pajamas all day. I'm not wearing fancy formal wear all day. We're not doing those kinds of things all day. So I think it really helped with some of that initial participation. And then we started to, and it was when we first started. And then one of the things we did was we didn't pit people against each other. I should use a better word, especially because it's being recorded. We created small competitions for different groups, but we didn't take the groups that were always competing and put them against each other, like our cheer dance. There's always a little rivalry between cheer and dance. So we lumped both of them together and said, all right, cheer dance, we want to see your dress up today versus the cross country team. So that way, tried to get more kids involved. And so if you were in a sport, that was great. But then we looped in our choir, we looped in band, we want you to be dressed up, but we also want you to have your instrument with you. Or we want you to be dressed up, but we want you to do something that is part of your club, right? Here's your key club. Here's the Rotary Club, interact. So whatever is part of your club, make sure that you bring that into your dress up, so that it really showed who was interested, who could do stuff, or who's doing stuff, and then lay it out in terms of Instagram and Facebook and that kind of thing. So it at least worked a little bit. And then we had some drawings. So everybody who participated would get their name entered into the hat, and then we'd pull out a couple of hats, and then that discretionary money that nobody has, that everybody has, we would pull out $5 or $10, and then we just DoorDash them donuts or a burrito or something like that. And we did the same thing with staff.
Okay, I think that's pretty helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, and it wasn't great, but it worked the best because it was such a soupy sandwich, because transition happened like that. This year we'll have a little bit more planning time.
Yeah, and I like how you paired groups together that already existed to create, to build on that bond that they already have and create those bonds within your school. That's a good idea.
Right, and to not create more division, right? You don't want to pit two girls' sports against each other that are always rivalries anyway. You want to group those two and then, have them compete against somebody else. keeping that unifying theme, not division. Got enough division as it is. Okay. All right, anything else?
I was gonna say, Ryan, and to anybody else, I would recommend following other student councils on social media. So like if you're on Instagram, go find Eagle Crest Student Council, go find Rocky Stucco. Rocky Stucco does a lot of stuff. But if you follow those other councils around the state, you can see what other people are doing. And that's one of the things I like best about student council. Like you can steal somebody else's idea and nobody cares. Like we're all in the same boat trying to do the same thing, promoting community and student leadership. And it's not like you're stealing a football play from another team. Like you do what you can to make everybody feel like they belong and create this community. And so, but yeah, follow other student councils.
I'm gonna steal that idea.
And then what do events look like this coming year? Like, with all the unknowns and trying to be planned out as possible, how do we balance that?
I don't know. I think part of my thing is if we can have a dance, I want to have prom in November, right? Because when are schools going to be canceled? They're going to be canceled in April and May. If February and March are the soupy sandwich they were this year, then we're not going to be back in school, especially after spring break. So is there a way that we can do some of those big rites of passage prior to us leaving? So I don't know if we're going to be able to do homecoming, but we can figure out homecoming. And if we have to have homecoming outside on the football field, that would be awesome. But if we can have prom earlier so that our kids can have that opportunity, why wouldn't we do it? So I'm just kind of thinking about those things. But I don't have any idea what our events are going to look like. I'm still planning. I pulled a permit from the city for our homecoming parade. I've already lined up some of that stuff for homecoming. I haven't lined up a DJ yet, but I've got somebody in my back pocket if push comes to shove, and all the other cool DJs are taken. So we need to make sure that we have opportunities for it to be school to be as normal as possible. And those activities are huge because I hated high school. I hated it with a passion. And so the only thing that kept me involved in school were those kinds of things. So we have to make school a communal place where people gain identity and acceptance and connection. And if school is only academics, then we're going to lose our kids. All right, Justin.
Perfect. Brian, I hope we're not canceling events in April. Don't say that.
No, my lacrosse coach would hang me.
Yeah, I hope we're not canceling anything in April. So, Brian, I know you said you had to run for another meeting at 10, but that was awesome. Really, really appreciate it. Some great stuff. And again, going first is always difficult. So thank you for.
No, going first is always best because now all the stress is on everybody else.
There you go. Yeah. Just a couple of housekeeping things for the group before. And Brian, if you have to run, please feel free to do so.
Okay.
But just a couple of housekeeping stuff for the group before everyone signs off. I just want to remind everybody that we do have this summer Shasta Student Leadership Conference scheduled for next Wednesday, July 15th, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. I know a lot of you that are in this webinar have already signed up your students, but if you have not done so, please, we encourage everybody. We really do think we've got, obviously, it's not going to be the same, as much as we've become accustomed to Zoom, and we've done some great things on Zoom. It's not anything close to what we're doing in person, but we've, I think, come up with a pretty good agenda and format for our online summer conference next week. And so we do encourage everybody to sign their kids up. And again, it's free for advisors. So if there's any advisors out there that maybe you just don't have kids that are interested and you want to participate as an advisor, please reach out to Whitney. You've probably got multiple emails from her. So just reach out to her and register yourself. But if you've got students, we really encourage you guys to register them for that conference next week. Again, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. on July 15th. You're gonna see more information over the next couple of days from us, but we do again think we have a nice format. Like I mentioned before we started, we do have the summer webinar series. We've got multiple speakers of our student leadership committee that'll give some great presentations, as Brian did today, throughout the summer. And next week, we've got Stuart from Pagosa Springs, who's going to talk about improving advisory programs and mental health support in schools. And she's in the chat today, and her presentation will be next Monday, July 13th at 11 a.m. And Stuart, I'd like, if you're able to just kind of talk a little bit about your presentation next week and give kind of a little synopsis, and hopefully we can encourage people in today to come back next week. But Stuart, the floor is yours, and go ahead and just kind of talk a little bit about your presentation next week.
Sure. Thanks, Justin. It's going to be about revamping existing advisory programs or creating an advisory program from the ground up. This year would obviously be a stretch to get a full lift in like that, but for those of you who have been considering it, it's actually going to be the perfect year to begin planning in earnest for a revamp or a ground up advisory program. Our school has been running a successful and effective advisory program for the past 7 years, and I'm happy to share the information that we have learned through blood, sweat, and tears to be the best practices in an advisory program.
Perfect. Thanks, Stuart. Again, that's next Monday, July 13th, 11 a.m., improving advisory programs and mental health support in schools. So hopefully we'll be able to encourage everyone to come back, and I know Stuart's going to have a great presentation. So we look forward to that. That's all we've got. Again, thank you everybody for taking the time this morning and listening to Brian's presentation. We really appreciate that. Hopefully you've got something out of it, and you'll continue to do so as we continue on with these webinar series throughout the summer. So that's all we've got for you. I'd like to ask the leadership committee members just to stick around on the Zoom for a few moments, and we just want to talk logistics for next week's summer conference. But everybody else, thank you, and look forward to seeing you next Monday, the 13th.
Hey, Justin, I have a question.
Yes.